Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with extra-hop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how extra-hop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/extra-hop. That's extra HOP. Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. Endpoint security is designed to protect every device in your fleet, wherever it may be. These days, that can be a lot of different places. Find out how HP Wolf Security uses emerging strategies like application isolation, along with a zero-trust approach and framework to give you a powerful, manageable, usable solution to your growing and increasingly spread-out security challenges. Learn how HP Wolf Security can make a difference across your endpoints at securityweekly.com/HP Wolf.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on your RSA Conference 2022 full conference pass. RSA Conference will be live in San Francisco June 6th through 9th, 2022. Security Weekly will be there in full force, delivering real-time live coverage and interviewing some of the event's top speakers and sponsors. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC2022 and use the code 52UCyber. 52 letter U Cyber. We hope to see you there. Also, don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, our Discord server, which we monitor during the episodes when we're recording them live, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. Now, for the Enterprise Security Weekly news, you can check out securityweekly.com/ESW269 if you want to follow along as we go through the news, or for links to the articles if you want to read the full articles. And I do recommend it on a couple of these. I think I've got at least 1 or 2 long reads in here that are interesting and worth a listen. All right. So apologies, Katie. I do not have this sorted nicely like I usually do. I didn't get to that part. I'll probably still do it later tonight just because it's gonna bug me not having it sorted the way I usually do.
It won't bug me at all. It's your own bugaboo.
Yeah. It's I'll own that. Yeah, so let's start with acquisitions because there are a shocking number of large multi-billion-dollar acquisitions this week. I think at least 3 that are over $1 billion, if not more. So I think the largest one that we could start with would be SailPoint. And basically being taken private by a PE shop. Thoma Bravo is acquiring them. Thoma Bravo is known for these kind of large acquisitions. I think it was last year that they took Proofpoint private for something like $12.3 billion, if I recall. So yeah, not actually one of the smaller ones that they've done. They did another one that wasn't security related. It was a software company, I think, earlier this year for $10 billion. So yeah, this is just spending money for them. You know, this is pretty normal for them, but for the security industry, pretty big deal size.
Yeah, certainly a big deal for SailPoint. Good company. Certainly tackling an important space, but Thoma Bravo has been active over the last several years, picking up companies and then flipping them over to a certain degree as well. So, this is an interesting move by them, looking at identity governance. And then, as you said, Proofpoint, that's an adjacent space. It's obviously they're trying to pick pieces of the cybersecurity landscape to, it looks to me anyway, like to complement each other versus, having.
Are you saying they could? Are you saying they could combine them? Maybe.
I don't know anybody over there, so I certainly don't want to speak for them. But they could at least have a nice complement of integrated technologies under one roof, for sure. Whether they become megacorp, that's yet TBD, but certainly within their portfolio, they've got a nice complement of cybersecurity companies without too much overlap, really.
I mean, we saw Cylance go into BlackBerry and Mandy go to Google, so it wouldn't be the craziest pairing, right?
It would not, no.
All right, the second largest one, I think, is Datto, which is a DATTO. Not sure the best way to pronounce that, but I would call it Datto. Disaster recovery software vendor. Makes a lot of sense for them to be acquired by Kaseya for $6.2 billion. Based on what Kaseya does for their customers, especially post ransomware, makes a whole lot of sense for them to invest in some backup, right?
Well, sure. I mean, the first rule of ransomware is backups, isn't it? Right? So
crypto ransomware, yes. But that's a deeper conversation. I think we're going to see bad guys move beyond just encrypting files to hold you for. In fact, we've already seen that with them copying a data offsite and threatening to release it to the public.
Certainly. Obviously, ransomware started as this little thing. Then when people started getting, started saying, oh, yeah, we need to have these backups, then they moved to other places. The attackers moved to other places. And it'll continue to happen as soon as people and companies wise up to what is happening in the attacker landscape. It'll always be shifting. This certainly makes a certain amount of sense. I did hear a good dad joke today about ransomware, as long as we're on the topic.
Oh no, go for it.
Okay, I have to give credit to my friend Simon, who's over at SANS. How did the hacker get away from the police?
I don't know how.
He ransomware.
Oh man.
Sorry.
I mean, it's going to be a variation on ransom.
In my mind, I had to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard CISO variations of that same one.
All right, moving on.
Let's see. So those are the two big ones: 6.9 billion for SailPoint, 6.2 billion for Datto. I think the next one, if we try and go in order here, is probably going to be Barracuda Networks getting acquired from KKR. Not a terribly exciting one, because it's being handed off from Thoma Bravo, who we were just talking about, acquiring SailPoint, to KKR, which is pretty common. We often see Vista and Thoma Bravo handing off to each other, or KKR, some mix of those PE firms. And generally, they make a pretty good amount. I don't know how much they would have made here. When Thoma Bravo acquired,
give too many details.
No, and originally we got the details for the Barracuda acquisition when Thoma Bravo picked them up because it was a take private. The details of like what they were paying per share needed to be public because they were a public company. But now that it's PE firm to PE firm, they don't have to share that. But 4.5 years ago, the price was $1.6 billion, and it looks like they've grown maybe 30-40% since then, which 30-40% over almost 5 years is not great growth. So I wouldn't put the price much higher than that 1.6, like maybe 2.5. Wouldn't be awful for Thoma. No,
Barracuda's been around a long time. they certainly have some good tech there, but they might be at a little bit of a plateau as far as market penetration and capabilities. So maybe this is an infusion to kickstart them in some new direction, or just expanding on what they have. But we are still talking about billions of dollars, like it's no great shakes, and that's not the case here. Even if they're growing, a steady company that's been around for as long as Barracuda, growing at 30-40%, I'm sure that their sales teams have more ambitious goals, because every sales team does, but that's not horrible. That's not, first of all, it's not negative growth, so that's good.
Right,
and it's not completely flat. And we're still talking in the billions of dollars, and the higher you get, the harder it is to make that percentage point higher.
Yeah, certainly. So an interesting one here that I couldn't. Okay, yeah. So that's right. I updated this. The not acquisition. So this was actually reported by one of the. I've got many different sources I use to gather this. This information for the news segment, and one of them saw this because somebody actually entered it into Crunchbase as an acquisition, but it's not an acquisition. And for anybody that doesn't know, Crunchbase is kind of like Wikipedia, where if you have an account, you can change stuff in it. I think
that's a story that we should actually be covering here, because I've heard numerous times from people saying, well, Crunchbase says, or I found this on Crunchbase. Yeah. So, note to the industry, Crunchbase, it's media like anything else. So, just keep that in mind.
So, yeah, the actual link I have in the story here is to the erroneous Crunchbase acquisition note. And then I have another link in the text there, which isn't clickable. You'll have to copy and paste it. But it's the link to the actual story.
Micro news that you have here. Yeah, that looks like.
Yeah, that's it. So that's the one that kind of sets everything straight here. Basically, what's happening is they're partnering to form a new company that they will co-own. So Synopsys and Juniper Networks will co-own a company, and Synopsys, like usually when we talk about it, we're talking about AppSec. They acquired Black Duck and some other AppSec related vendors, but their main thing that they do is chip design, semiconductors. So completely different from how we normally talk about them. So this new company they're forming is kind of concerned with the semiconductor and chip production side of things. So
which
yeah, they're
strange for Synopsys, but for Juniper, it's a little on the edge.
I agree. I mean, Juniper, you don't hear a whole lot about Juniper Networks. I mean, they're always kind of been in the shadow of Cisco and maybe even Arista. Some of the other hardware providers out there. Even Palo Alto when talking about firewalls at least. But I wouldn't. So it is interesting from that perspective. Maybe they're doing something innovative here. That
it says in
go in
this
a different
article,
direction in the future.
If people don't get to read it, well, part of Juniper, the new company closely collaborated with Tower Semiconductor to develop and qualify TSEM's. I don't even know how to say that. 518DA process technology to enable the industry's first laser-on-a-chip open silicon photonics platform. So,
yeah, that's why I didn't mention it. I don't understand most of that.
It's a lot of words that don't necessarily associate directly with security, but yet here you have Synopsys, which has made relatively recent investments in security, and Juniper, which is a security company, getting into this photonics platform space. So it'll be interesting. I don't know how much we'll actually end up following it, but
part of my problem with understanding it here is they don't really mention the use cases. You have to already know what photonics is used for. Like the closest thing I can think of is data transmission is fiber, things like that. But yeah, they don't mention any like what this technology would be used for, so it goes over my head.
But they will have integrated lasers that can be used this summer, so that's pretty cool.
Lasers.
Yes.
Lasers. Pew pew. All right. Tufin, one of the original 4 or 5 kind of firewall automation, firewall management products that has been around for 15, 20 years now, along with, let me see if I can remember, Firemon, AlgoSec, and there's one that I'm going to forget. But along with those guys, Tufin's been around for a long time. It's kind of a niche market, and I feel like they kind of hit the limit of that market. You've seen companies like Firemon branching out into new markets, into different categories, and yeah. So this is finally Tufin's exit. Looks like a PE shop is looking to acquire them for $570 million. With a 30-day go shop option, which is not something I often see on acquisition announcements. So Tufin basically has a month to go, weigh their options.
Right. It's like a house on the market that's contingent upon, accepting backup offers kind of deal. But this is the first time we've heard from Tufin in a really long time, or at least substantively.
Same. Yeah, I haven't seen a press release from them in a long time. Yeah, so another interesting one here, Perforce Software, which was acquired by yet another PE firm, Clear Lake Capital, in 2018, acquires Puppet, which a lot of people know as infrastructure automation, widely used by DevOps teams and IT teams to automate all kinds of infrastructure jobs, management jobs. You can patch with it, similar to Ansible and Salt. I think in use cases, I think they compete there. So pretty big in the DevOps world, and clearly has some security use cases, which is why I added it to the stories today.
And again, we're talking about another company. There seems to be a lot of movement this week with companies that have been around a long time, have good legacies, maybe have been a little under the radar in some cases or in adjacent spaces. But according to this article, Perforce has been around since 1995. And its acquisition happened in 2018. So they've been around, a long time here. Obviously modernizing, almost $200 million in funding since 2009 from Puppet. So Puppet, again, 2009, not quite as old as Perforce, but two older companies coming together. This is an important space, obviously becoming more and more important as DevOps continues to expand and move more rapidly. But it's an interesting trend this week of companies that have legacies that are making news versus some of the newer upstarts or startups, I suppose, that we've been seeing in the recent months.
Yeah, so I haven't really followed Puppet at all, so I don't know if this is a distress sale or, we don't have any kind of deal price. They've raised just shy of $200 million overall, over 8 rounds. And yeah, so I don't know if they got a good exit or not, but it is an exit. And our last acquisition here is Help Systems, who we had on as a sponsor. We had a sponsored interview with Bob earlier, and the latest company that they acquired is Terra Nova Security, who is in the phishing simulation and security awareness training space. So very crowded space, but certainly a moneymaker. KnowBe4 has done very well went public not too long ago. We've seen a lot of acquisitions in the space, and continuing to round out Help Systems portfolio, which this has got to be, they've got to be well past a dozen security acquisitions since they started with Core Security a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I didn't want to throw anybody off course, but I was kind of dying to ask him about the long-term strategy because, as you alluded to in the interview, Help Systems has just kind of come around the curve in the last couple of years, but they seem to be vying for the title of, one-stop shop for security. So I'd love to understand what the growth strategy is. Is security going to be one of the main headlines for them, or is there something else that they're aiming to do here at a bigger level? Because security, of course, is our world, and it is a big piece of the business world, but it is just that, a piece of the business world, and Help Systems seems to be taking advantage of the wealth of companies, the number of companies in the space, as well as their position as an enterprise to acquire these companies. But, what's the means to an end here?
Yeah. I mean, the strategy seems clear, maybe not the ultimate goal or the vision, like you, I can't really see that. But certainly they're going after companies that are not dead companies, not distressed, still growing, but not the market leader, so not going to be the most expensive buy, but solid. And they now have a ton of those companies. And as Bob was mentioning, like there's a lot of opportunities to integrate between those. He was talking about Core Impact and Cobalt Strike having some integrations. Now they've got Digital Defense, which has its own network vulnerability scanner and web vulnerability scanners. I think they grabbed another vulnerability management company as well that I can't think of the name of. So certainly some opportunities to integrate there. But yeah, this feels a lot like a mid-2000s Symantec or McAfee acquisition run.
Right. And is this a strategy?
Is it wise? I don't know.
Is this a strategy to create a company that offers a whole bunch of things in one place? Maybe not best of breed, but it's a suite of products which makes it easier to buy, to deploy, to manage and maintain. And it offers, I certainly don't want to diminish them because they have a lot of good companies in their portfolio, but quote, good enough security in one place versus, trying to put all of these different disparate technologies into one enterprise and manage the data and manage the systems. Where is that? Because we know of plenty of other companies that are looking at that. It's the vendor lock-in piece. Hey, we're going with company X, or the company that shall not be named because it has everything in one place. And even though there are companies with slightly better security functionality, it's easier to get one thing from one place. It's the big box store mentality versus the little boutique shopping.
Yeah. I think it's definitely easier to see with companies that already have that very specific solid base. Like if you look at Elastic, they've done a lot of acquisitions, but they all fit into a database, right? They all fit into a company that's based around a data platform or a SIM. If you look at Fortinet, tons of acquisitions there. They have a huge product portfolio, but all of it fits around a UTM device or, some kind of network device that also interacts with endpoint. Basically, they can sell you most of your preventative controls, for a small to mid-sized enterprise. Here it's I'll be interested to see that emerge. Core Security was the first security company that I think they acquired. I could be wrong in that. There might have been one right before that, but that was certainly the one that caught most people's attention. So maybe that's the core, but their product offerings, aren't a network firewall, endpoint controls, data repository. It doesn't make as much sense. So be interested to see how that vision kind of emerges over time.
Yeah.
Let's see, where should we go from here? Let's see, some funding announcements. I thought it was interesting. DuckDuckGo launched a browser, basically, for the Mac. I thought that was an interesting approach. Something I've been looking at a little bit. There are a bunch of startup search engines out there now. There's one called u.com that I've been trying out for a little while, and most of them are very focused on privacy. So it's interesting. Like DuckDuckGo actually has a ton of competitors here now in kind of that space.
They do, but I think it's also important for people to remember that while it's for advertising, it's not a security platform in the sense that none of your data is getting collected, stored, analyzed, etc. So while I use DuckDuckGo as well as others on various occasions, I think this is also to a degree riding a wave, but also a wave of obfuscation from what actually is happening. Okay. Because I think they talk about privacy, but they're only talking about one aspect of privacy when you're looking at browser technology. And, any little bit we can get is great, but it's not the whole picture. And that, I know this is completely off topic from what this story is. But when I read this, that's what hit me, because I know that a lot of people think, oh, I'm browsing privately. Well, that's not exactly true.
I'm just looking for the part where they say that they're based on Chrome, because everything is based on Chrome.
Right.
So they do talk about that, and they say DuckDuckGo for Mac does not fork Chromium or anything else. Instead, they used a rendering engine that comes with macOS, which is Safari, or what Safari uses. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so they went so that's why they're releasing it on Mac and not anything else. So like on Apple's mobile devices, you don't have a choice. You have to use Apple's rendering engine. I'm not sure if that's the same, if that's true on macOS, but I know it is on the mobile devices. Like when you use Chrome or Firefox or anything like that on your iPhone or your iPad, you're only using the visual framework. They're all required to use the underpinning engine that powers Safari. There's only one choice there. And I say that's something they do for security reasons. But yeah, it's interesting that we get a new browser and it's not based on Chrome. So that's interesting.
That is interesting. It does say it will have a launch of Windows in the near future.
Yeah, Safari's on Windows, so they can certainly take that, as long as there's no licensing issue there and Apple lets them use it on Windows. I suppose they could do that. So yeah, that'll be the really interesting piece, is to see if the Windows version is Chromium based or not. But it sounds like that's kind of like they're putting their foot down on that, and they're not going to use Chromium. So,
but another interesting piece is that the Mac app does not yet support extensions. So if you're using an ad blocker, you won't be able to use it in this browser. It comes with its own native ad blocker.
Okay.
And blocking some ads. And DuckDuckGo will release its source code after the beta, which I assume is, in the coming months here.
Yeah. Very interesting. And actually, one of the competitors I used is kind of going after that one place to search for all your stuff. I'm blanking on the name now. Neva or something like that. Is it Neva? But it combines the web search engine and also like file search engine at the same time. So it'll integrate with Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or all of the above, with the idea that you just have one search bar for all your stuff. So, to your point about, it's just searching the web, it's not searching your personal stuff. Some of the competitors here are actually going that route. Yeah, Neva is what it's called.
It's an interesting definition of privacy. Like I said, anything that moves actual privacy forward is good. But it's complicated. This is not a very cut and dried type of answer to solving all of your privacy woes. Mm-hmm. That said, I still stubbornly hold on to my Chrome when I want to do better searching, because in some of these privacy or privacy-like browsers, you just don't get the best search results either. So, it's privacy versus ease of use, and you're always going to have that to a degree.
Yeah. Let's see what else we have here. One I thought was interesting was number 11 here. Malwation raised a undisclosed seed round, and looks like the whole purpose of the product is to pretend to be malware so you can test your endpoint products.
I know nothing about this company, but their website is fantastic.
Yeah, it's like some kind of blob version of the Monopoly guy is what that guy looks like to me. And he remind you of the Monopoly guy?
There's the first guy, and then the MSP guy looks like, I don't have kids, so I don't know, but there's some big monster from something else.
Like Monsters, Inc. or something like that.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, big red hairy monster guy.
It looks like somebody combined the two main characters. I forget their names. The big hairy guy and the one Mike and Sully. Thank you. Yeah, it looks like what you would get if you combined the two. That's funny. Yeah, it was. I forget that there was another company that used, some three-dimensional cartoony characters, and it was also malware related. Blanking on the name. They would put malware to sleep. They basically make your system look like it was a researcher's analysis system, and that would tell them most malware doesn't run, tries to avoid being inspected in those environments. They also used a similar visual branding. But yeah, interesting. Looks like it's a Turkish company.
A Turkish company, yeah.
So yeah, also a lot of unique things going on here. But yeah, that one was notable. Not a ton of the other fundraisers here were notable. Let's see, another link. I've got several trends in here. One that's worth just spending a moment talking about. I included number 5 here. Goes over so CB Insights has actually mapped out the metaverse into categories, and then companies, subcategories, and then companies within those subcategories and categories. So I've seen a lot of people kind of making fun of the metaverse. Yeah, I might have been one of them at some point, saying basically it's just a new term for a bunch of companies that already exist. And I don't know, take a look at this and tell me if you still think the same way, if you were kind of on that bandwagon. But I think it's useful because it helps you understand where some of the startups in the space are going. And any new technology trend is useful, I think, for anybody responsible for defense, or does security research or anything like that. Technology tends to drive new threats and new trends and new concerns. So always good to keep track of that, which is why I included it in the news this week. Let's see. I'm actually going to give a quick shout out to a competing podcast, just because it looks like a really interesting episode. the Defense in Depth podcast has Haroon Mir on in a podcast titled "Why Do So Many Cybersecurity Products Suck?" And if you're not aware, I used to work with Haroon over at Thinks Canary, and we both did a keynote that was a little bit popular called "The Products We Deserve," where we kind of went over some of the problems with the industry, with everything from marketing to the industry analyst space, and it looks like a continuation of that conversation here on this. I haven't checked it out yet, but I mean, with the folks involved, should be a really interesting conversation. It's David Spark, who runs this whole podcast series, Jeff Belknap who's the CISO over at LinkedIn, and then Haroon Mir. So should be a very interesting conversation worth checking out.
Yeah, I read through this a little quickly, but obviously Haroon always has some good insights on this, and he's not afraid to hit on some controversial points, which I think is kind of needed. He's bringing it back to reality and saying, here's what I believe is going on, and I think there's some veracity to a lot of what he says in terms of what the market is, what the market is allowing for, and if we're being honest with ourselves, what kinds of things we need to do to really start affecting good security hygiene, because it's not the flip of a switch. It's not the implementation of any one product or any suite of products. It's a lot of things, and that's, it gets back to the fundamentals too, right? It's people, process, and technology, and we're missing bits of all of those three pieces right now, and it's a lot easier to build a product that does something and say, hey, we fixed this, but if you haven't fixed all of the precursors to it, you're still building on a shaky foundation. And that's what he alludes to a little bit here. So some things to think about in there. I thought what I read was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the TLDR, if you go watch, you can just go to YouTube, type in "The Products We Deserve," and one of the conclusions I think Haroon came to, and me and him don't agree 100% on all of these items, which I thought makes the talk even more interesting, because it's not just two people nodding, in total agreement on everything with each other, because it's a complex set of topics. But certainly, the TLDR, and one of the conclusions is that a lot of these companies, don't do better because nobody's making them do better, and that's something that customers can certainly have the power to do, expect better, and demand better from your vendors, better quality products, better service. And yeah, I do think there is some aspect of, just exhaustion there. Like, just give me something that's, it's half built. You're going to build the rest. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. Or, hey, we're going to help you influence the product, but then that benefits the company who's helping. Not all companies. Absolutely. Every company is different. And then I've also heard across the years here that, and this is a very cynical point of view, that it doesn't benefit vendors to actually build products that completely work.
Well, right, because it's better if it's a work in progress, you're saying?
Well, if we fix all the products with all the problems with one product, hypothetically, theoretically, some grand utopia, we fix all the problems. There's no more product that needs to be sold.
That's pretty cynical.
It is very cynical, but there is a contingent out there that I've heard over the years, especially my years running conferences, that believes that to be true. Yeah,
and I don't think anybody's actively doing that, but I certainly think there are plenty of cases out there where companies could do better, could do a lot better, but don't, because their customers just aren't demanding it. and it's not having an impact on growth. So why would they, right? Why would they
and
work
then there's
harder?
also the market opportunity in terms of, the aforementioned funding and acquisitions. Is the company building to a place where they want to get acquired? Or are they building to a place where they want to create the best product? Do they want to become that mega company? Do they want to IPO and stand on their own? That's a very different growth strategy than one that wants to build to an acquisition, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and often, the exit, if the exit is the goal, or the next fundraise is the goal, and your metrics on that are your KPIs, OKRs, whatever you've got are pointing you towards growth and not customer satisfaction. Then again, like the business is just not aligned with the customer's best interests. So what do you think you're going to get?
Right.
So I think the last item before we hit the squirrel story here that I want to share is the deep think from Daniel Meisler. Again, alongside Haroon Mir, one of my favorite deep thinkers who, doesn't say a whole lot, but when they do, it's worth reading, worth listening. I guess that's relative. They actually both say a whole lot. There's a lot of stuff you can read and listen to from both of them out there. But that's story number 12 here. Thinking about the future of InfoSec. I agree. I think it's very useful kind of thinking about how the industry evolves as it goes forward. I think security's always been a bug fix for technology, or at least a huge chunk of security, has existed as, the patch or the gap to fill in something incomplete that was sold to you by a technology vendor, or in whether it's a piece of software or a service or what have you. I often call them missing feature markets. We have entire markets that only exist because AWS didn't build a piece, or there's some gap in a SaaS application, for example. We're seeing a big resurgence in CASB, vendors that kind of look like CASBs, where they're providing additional security controls for you that maybe LinkedIn or Salesforce or whoever it might be didn't provide for you, or to detect attacks there. So I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing, but I can easily, after reading hundreds of his articles, easily recommend it as something to check out. And I think this kind of looking forward, it's why I included the bit on the metaverse, right? I think it's necessary to always be looking forward, because the future's here before you know it, and all of a sudden, ransomware is a thing and you're not prepared for it. All right, and the squirrel story actually introduced this kind of at the last second. So apologies, Katie, you haven't had a chance to watch this.
I haven't, but the little bit you told me, this is fantastic.
It's great. Basically, a journalist over at, or a writer over at CNET has just did an experiment to see if he could pre-record all the necessary responses for all the boring meeting season all week, where he only needs to talk for 30 seconds or something about like that. Like if it's a weekly stand up, I'm sure in a lot of media companies, they just go around the table and everybody talks about, what project they're working on, what piece they're writing to publish that week. And yeah, it's really entertaining. I don't know how it popped up on my radar. It's actually not new. It's actually from 2020. So it's from a couple months into the pandemic. But it's brilliant. He's not trying to convince anybody that you should have a fake avatar attend all your meetings for you. But the experiment in itself, if you watch it, you can see it's kind of worthwhile just to see what it would be like if you tried to do that. And it's really interesting. It's an interesting process he went through. And TLDR, it ends up being more work to pretend like you're in a meeting than to not just attend the meeting anyway. So, at least at this point, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do. Really fun experiment though, and he learned some interesting stuff doing it.
I guess the question is, the initial setup, is that the whole, is that the bulk of the workload, and could it be automated to some degree moving forward? So if you put in that time investment, will it pay off a week, a month, a year later? Asking for a friend.
No, I think part of the problem is you constantly have to update that content. So you still have to do the work that you would do in that meeting. You just have to do it beforehand. And you can't predict every scenario. So he was still really nervous that somebody would ask him something that he hadn't anticipated. So he would actually sit there.
It's the Ferris Bueller scene, right? It's the Ferris Bueller scene at the end of the movie.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, but he would sit there and babysit it because he was worried somebody would ask something or do something that he did have it set up where it could have been fully automated, but yeah, he ended up being so stressed out that it would not be prepared for something that he was there just in case. But yeah, he did make it a whole week without being live on camera, and nobody noticed. And they were all, he captured the reactions of everyone when his still automated, pre-recorded self revealed the trick to all of them at the end. And that was also very satisfying.
Excited to read this because it sounds like a lot of fun. Maybe less fun for him if he was that stressed out.
Yeah. It's less than 8 minutes long. It's a short video. So it's a fun watch. All right. Well, that's all I've got. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining me today. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.